1, 2, 3. Could you say hello into the microphone?
Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Taritu Taritu Re Swaha.
Namaste, this is Lindsey Porter, and those few words you heard there were from Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo, who I had the great fortune to meet and interview in 2018. This podcast today both celebrates the rebrand of our passion project, founded by yogi Emma Frame and myself, Lindsey Porter, and which we are now calling Voices of Yoga. And secondly, it celebrates talking to this remarkable person and all that she stands for. If you're yet to become familiar with Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo and her story, let me give you a little bit of insight before we speak to her directly. Jetsunma studied the Drukpa lineage of the Kagyu school of Tibetan Buddhism. She's an author, teacher and founder of the Dongyu Gatsal Ling Nunnery in Himachal Pradesh in northern India. Currently in her mid-70s, she was born and raised in Hertfordshire, just north of London. At age 20, she discovered an interest and a calling in Buddhism and travelled to India. It was here she met and discovered as a root guru the 8th Kamtrul Rinpoche, and she studied at his monastery. Tenzin noted much discrimination being the only female amongst these monks and vowed to attain enlightenment in the female form. Still in her early 20s, Jetsunma went to meditate and live in a remote cave in the high Himalayas, where she stayed for 12 years, living with the basics and survived temperatures of up to minus 35 degrees Celsius and where there was snow for 6 to 8 months of the year. The book that was written about her story, including her time in the Cave in the Snow, written by Vicky Mackenzie, I read about 20 years ago and have revisited it several times over the years, and it's just always really struck me quite deeply about the experience and learning more about Buddhism. So when I had the opportunity to meet her on a very rare visit to the UK in 2018, I quickly bought my ticket and I was on my way. So here we go, without further ado, my talk with Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo. It was a great honour. I'm sitting here today with Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo. Namaste.
Namaste.
I'm actually shaking like a leaf today because it's just such a wonderful moment to be spending with you, and I fully appreciate that. There are so many questions, but one thing I'd personally just like to ask you, in your book and your experiences about Cave in the Snow and your time in the Himalayas, you talked about the importance of your yoga practice when you were meditating, and I'm just interested to hear a bit more about what your practices meant to you during that time. And
Well, because I was living in this very small space in the cave, and within that I was living and sleeping in a small square sort of box called a meditation box. So during that time, especially during my 3-year retreat, then I didn't lie down. So since from childhood I've had back problems, I was by this time in a lot of physical pain because also one has to chop wood, there's a lot of snow to be thrown away, and all of these were big, strain on the lower back. So I realized that I really had to do some exercise, and the obvious exercise to do for the back would be yoga. So I wrote to a bookseller in Delhi and said, could you recommend some yoga book? And so he sent up 2 books, of which one of them was the Bikram yoga. In those days it was nothing about being hot, which was just as well. So I started on the Bikram yoga, and for the first 3 months it was real agony. But even though it was so painful, my body was saying, this is good, keep going, don't give up. So I trusted the messages coming from my body and kept going. And I remember very well, one morning I woke up and moved, and there was no pain, and I wriggled around and there was no pain, and after that there was no pain. And so recognizing how wonderful this had been for my whole being, I kept going for the whole time I was there. The one point was never to ask myself, do I feel like doing yoga? because that would be fatal. So I didn't ask myself, do I want to do it? I just put out my yoga mat and did it. And so I'm deeply grateful to Bikram, actually, because no matter what, his method really helped. At the end of the 3 years, I suddenly had to go down. I mean, I hadn't walked anywhere except in my small compound for 3 years. And I suddenly had to go down to the main village to see the police. And so that's like a 3-hour journey down the mountainside and then along the road, and then to come back up again. And I was perfectly okay. My legs were in such good condition that every cell in my body was like singing.
Wow.
And so I was genuinely impressed because it works.
Yes, the benefits of yoga right there.
Right. I mean, I could have no doubt.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
And I'm interested for people that are in the West in particular looking and Western women into getting more involved in Buddhism, where would be a good place for them to start?
Oh, that's a very hard question. I mean, first of all, it depends where they are. Buddhism, of course, has many different traditions, many different aspects, depending on the country where it came from after India. So there is the Theravadin school of like Sri Lanka, Thailand, Burma, and so forth, and then the Zen schools of Korea and China and Japan, and then the Vajrayana schools of Tibet and Bhutan and so forth. So a lot depends on what you're particularly interested in, what kind of teachers you meet, who is the local Dharma center. But I would recommend, if people genuinely are interested, start with some very basic book on Buddhism, you know, just something which gives the very basic principles which are accepted in all schools, and take it from there. There's so much nowadays on YouTube.
True.
You know, so one can play around on that too and see if there's any particular angle which catches you.
Did you have at the moment a favourite saying or quote that inspires you?
I think maybe don't believe everything you think.
And is there anything else you would like to share to our listeners today about the path or in general?
I think the important thing is to integrate one's spiritual path with one's daily life. I think that this is really very important, especially nowadays. Everybody is, so busy and so stressed and always complaining they have no time. So the important thing is to make your time by making your daily life your spiritual practice, using it to cultivate awareness, to cultivate kindness, to cultivate generosity, and so forth. And in that way, then everyone that you encounter during your day is part of your practice.
Lovely, yes. Thank you for that. Thank you very much for your time today, Jetsunma.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed listening to that conversation I had with Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo in 2018. If it is of interest to anybody, I'm actually going out to visit the Donggu Gatsaling nunnery that she resides in, and basically it's funded to promote female monks in their course of study in October 2019. Please get in touch if that's something you would like to join me to that place. You can also read more about Jetsunma at her website, which is tenzinpalmo.com, TENZINPALMO.com. And in the meantime, we look forward to you tuning in again to voicesofyoga.com for more inspirational stories about yoga from yogis from around the world. Until the next time, namaste.